Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Triangle BNI. My name is Mike Manning, and each week we bring you wonderful small business success stories from the Triangle area. If you are not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle, which is Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill in North Carolina, have 29 chapters, have six more core groups and about 650 members, all of which trying to start or expand a small business. And we like to bring you those stories each week. And our guest this week, Joe Aiello, an independent insurance agent with Riddick Insurance Group. Joe, glad to have you here today.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Joe holds the property and casualty seat in RD 18 Connections in Motion. He is also the secretary treasurer, which I know you love doing. You do a good job. You like to stand
Thank
up
you.
and talk like the rest of us,
I
right?
do. I do.
They meet Thursdays at noon at Red Hot and Blue on Falls. So if you want to meet some good folks, want to go visit a chapter, which we recommend you do, if you go to trianglebni.com, there's a button in the upper right-hand corner. It says find a chapter. You can click on that. About 5 days a week, there's meetings, mornings and lunchtime. Find out what area works good for you, what time works good for you. Come visit a chapter. We can show you what we're about. We know we can help you or somebody you know start or grow a small business. So that's what you're going to learn about today. And we're going to hear from Joe. All right. So I always like to start with people where this is, we're already in almost the middle of February
I know.
of 2019. How's 2019 looking business wise for you so far?
2019 has been good. Early part of the year tends to be our slower part of the year because we base our insurance agency around real estate. And so when it's real estate related, you have ebbs and flows in the market where people are buying houses or people are not buying houses. And so as a result, you have ups and downs with the number of policies that you're writing, number of new clients, things like that. But, so far, this year has been a really good start to the year, been getting a lot of referrals in January and into February now, so I feel like it's gonna be a really, really good year.
The real estate industry has changed immensely because probably what 7 or 8 years ago, or even 10 years ago, it was summertime.
Yeah.
Families are thinking about moving not till the kids are out of school, all that transition, everything, which made perfect sense back then. But now it's year round, especially in this market, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we've got a guy now that I was just referred to this morning by a fellow BNI member, Nevin Williams, and, buying a house next Friday. So,
Yeah.
you just there's no rhyme or reason to it anymore. It's just it used to be all related to, well, you can't take a kid out of school in the middle of the year or things like that. But now kids have year-round schools and stuff like that. So it's really, it varies.
Do is there a big difference in your world between new builds and existing houses?
Yeah, new builds tend to be very cost effective when it comes to insuring. They're very cheap when it comes to insurance. Rates are very good. Companies give good discounts for new builds. So yeah, we love new builds. That's a very competitive aspect of our what we do.
And does that also give you a chance to talk to the buyer about if you put, home security and things like that in, that will lower their insurance bill as well?
Yeah, it makes it really easy to refer some of those other vendors like your home alarm guys and people like that because you're actually doing them a service by mentioning that to them. And obviously it's an easy sell because you're giving them a discount and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. It's a very easy way to refer.
All right, on the screen there, you can see trianglebni.com. Love for you to go there, check everything out. Give us a call, 919-465-1667. You can talk to Steve or Mary or Brenda in the office. And if you'd shoot us a note at BNI at nissancommunications.com with any thoughts you have, any questions you have about BNI, we'd love to hear from you. If you've never been to a BNI meeting, each week there's a featured speaker. There's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, a length of time, depending on the size of your chapter. And each speaker is introduced by the member bio sheet. So that's how we do it. So, Joe, we're going to start with that. Speaker today, Joe Aiello, independent insurance agent with Riddick Insurance Group. Profession, obviously, insurance. He's property and casualty. You do write business.
Yep, we do
Okay.
commercial as
When
well.
needed. Yep. Location and years of business for Riddick Insurance.
So our office is located in North Raleigh on Six Forks and Lynn Road. So basically we're a couple miles south of 540 and a couple miles north of 440. I've been an insurance agent now for almost 8 years, actually a little more than 8 years. Our agency has been around for probably about 11 or 12 years. And, we've we just kind of same place
Mhm.
the whole time. And a lot of us work remotely though. I tend to be an office guy, so I
Yeah.
tend to work in the office most days, but some of our producers tend to work remotely.
Okay. And we're going to talk during the show, get into the advantages of being an independent insurance agent versus someone else.
Mhm.
Not to say it's not; those aren't good places to work.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of times with independent insurance agents, you guys could quote. You can call anybody for a quote, which is great. So we'll talk about that and how you got with Riddick. Previous types of jobs. I know what you did after college. Those aren't the stories I want to hear. I want to hear a funny high school, most memorable during college job that kind of make people go, "Yeah, I kind of did that." So.
Sure, yeah. So I've worked a whole litany of jobs. Some of the weirder ones, I worked at the dollar store, for a
Mhm.
while, and so obviously with that, you get the jokes of, "Well, what do they pay you, a dollar an hour?" And, those get old after a while. And one of the weirder ones that I worked as a doorman for, an apartment complex downtown Chicago. I was in college, and I worked the overnight shift, and one of the worst things was, I was a brand new employee, and there was a guy that was my RA in college, and he basically decided that he was gonna play a joke on me, and he was gonna play a prank, and he knew how nervous I was about working. It was one of my first nights there, and so, he called probably about 11 or 12 o'clock at night, so it was when there was still people that were milling around, and, he called in a complaint from one of the residents, even
Mhm.
though he was not a resident, and basically said that there was a noise complaint. I needed to go up to this room on this floor and take care of it. It's an ongoing issue, and they're constantly disputing. So I went up there. I didn't know what to do. I was very nervous. Here I am, an 18-year-old kid. I don't know what to do, and I go up to the floor and I can't find the room. I can't find the apartment. This particular apartment, there was some weird sequencing with the numbers where that was not a number.
Okay.
So I'm on that floor looking for this. I come down, I said, Joe, I can't find the apartment. What do I do? You told me to call you. And he's like, man, you got to find that. That's very important. We get, we get this calls. You go up, you turn right after the elevator and you go here. And I go up, I can't find it. I'm calling him again. I can't find it. What do I do? He's like, listen, man, it's very, very important that you find this. And long story short, then I hear laughing in the background that they're just messing with me. But yeah, that was an interesting job. I did work. I picked up garbage for a street sweeper.
Oh.
We would also work overnight, and we'd have a two-man team, and so one guy would be driving the street sweeper, and the other guy would have the job of getting out with the trash bag and
Mhm.
picking up trash, picking up the big stuff. And it's cold, and you see we cleaned a couple of malls, and so you see all these Sbarro
Yeah.
pizza containers and things like that. So I've had some interesting jobs.
And overnights, you see a lot of things.
Yeah,
A lot of one-offs.
there's a couple of non-PC stories I could tell you about some people that kind of randomly went up to, my brother and asked him if he knew where a particular location was, and he did not, but he got some offers for some services and things like that.
Very
So
good. Okay.
it was interesting.
And we'll talk about your connections to Chicago and why you're in North Carolina a little bit. Next section of the bio sheet is family information. I always ask people when they talk about their spouse,
Mhm.
how did you meet? And do you both tell the story the same way?
Yeah, we do tell a story the same way. It's actually not an exciting story. We met on the internet, which now I think is a lot more common, but
Yes.
at the time it was not very common. We met in the days of AOL, and so we just
Dial up.
yeah, I mean, we just met on a chat room, and her living in North Carolina and me living in Chicago made for a difficult correspondence, and so we would buy phone cards to talk to each other
Mhm.
long distance and things like that. Whereas now, those type of things, you can have a relationship with somebody in Vietnam and it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. There's so much technology that makes that easier. Whereas for us, it was not. But yeah, so we met long time ago, and
So
then
what was the connection? Because this was all over the internet, all just chat
yeah, it
rooms.
was really just
What was the connection that
there really wasn't anything specific. It was really just talking, and then gradually over a couple of years, that correspondence just became more personal and more serious. And
hmm,
so it really wasn't anything where we were both looking for information about Harley Davidsons or anything like that. It was really just correspondence.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nowadays you hear many relationships start that way.
I couldn't get into the dating scene anymore. I think I would probably just default to that route.
I never had game for it, so I'm lucky I met my wife the way I did because I hate
Yeah,
to be single.
exactly.
And you 2 have Virginia's your wife. You
Yep,
have 3 kids?
yep, 3
Right.
kids.
Cool names. Tell us all the names and about them. I like it.
Sure. There's really no significance to any of the
Okay.
names. I tried to name all of them, but I got vetoed. So, um, our first child is named Isaac. We had originally, when you're dating, you have the plan of you're discussing everything about
Yes.
everything you're gonna do, and you have these grand plans. And we had planned on naming our oldest David Joseph. We were gonna name middle name for me, and we got married, we had a baby, and at the time my wife was working for an engineering company in Garner, and her direct supervisor's name was David, and she couldn't stand him. And so
Yes.
when it came time to talk names, we said, all right, we're going to name it David, and she said, no, we're not going to name it David. And so we settled on Isaac, and I don't even remember why we settled on
You
Isaac,
don't
but
hear
we
that name a whole lot these days, so
no
that's good.
no. And then second child, we went with Evan. I didn't even try
Mhm.
to get into that naming scene. And then the third child, when we had her, we had also talked about having a name, of Madison, and
Mhm.
we just both kinda grew out of that name. And so I said, "Hey, I'd really like to name this one," and she said, "No, no, that's no good." And so she said, "But you can pick the middle name," and so I did. And so, it's Clara Emily.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, good names. Again, as somebody named Mike,
Right.
different is good. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
at, uh where's I at a Panera's the other day, and the young lady behind the counter, her name was Muffin, and I just told her, I said, "Hey, as somebody named Mike, I like your name. Nice and
Mhm,
different." So,
mhm.
any animals at the house?
No animals. No, we had a dog for a couple years and got rid of him, and so we're animal free, and I think we'll probably stay that way.
Kids not asking for a dog?
They liked the dog, but they didn't want the responsibilities of the dog. They
Mm.
didn't wanna take the dog out, and so things like that just got old. And so we were like, if you're not gonna do the activities, why do we have the dog?"
My brother and I are a year and a half apart, but he got married way later than I did, so my 2 boys are 32 and 28, and his kids are 16 and 13,
Mhm.
and they just got a dog, and I was over there the other day, and I was talking to my niece,
It's a lot more work than you realize.
Yeah, when it rains, who's gonna walk him?" She goes, "I'm just letting him out the back in the with the fenced-in yards."
But the dogs aren't stupid, they don't wanna go out.
Exactly, so hobbies and activities of interest.
Yeah, I'm a huge sports fan, so I love watching sports. I don't find as much time for it as I used to. I
Mm,
used to love watching everything. Now I probably my biggest sport is baseball, so I probably watch, in a 162 game season, I'll probably watch about 140 of those
mhm.
games, which sometimes makes me feel stupid, but
Nope. We'll talk about
it's a
baseball,
passion
yeah.
of mine.
Oh, yeah.
I love watching Illinois basketball, Notre Dame football, different things like that. Recently, my parents have moved down here from Chicago, so we were able to watch all the Bears games together on
Yeah.
Sundays, and that was a fun time to do that. When I'm not watching sports, I really enjoy reading. I read a lot of novels, and I've been trying to be better about reading more nonfiction,
Mm.
getting better at what you do type books as well. And I really enjoy just weird, like I'm a big fan of like simulation games, like a simulation baseball game
Yeah.
or things like that. Um, I just don't have a lot of time, and I tend not to waste it with a lot of TV other than sports.
So 2 questions in no particular order. Do you like Mitch Trubisky as your quarterback?
I do.
Okay. And what's the last book you read?
Last book that I read was a book by Brian Buffini, and it was I'm trying to think of the name of it now. It was Taking Care of Business.
Okay.
And just simple concepts. It actually makes me angry when I read a book like that because I look at how simple the concepts are, and I think to myself, these guys are making millions of dollars selling these books, and they're national bestsellers, and it's really just, "Hey, be nice to people."
Yeah.
Send a thank you card,
Yeah.
little things like that, and it just boggles my mind how they're making that money.
It's like you see something as simple as, like, these little yellow stickum pads, like,
Yeah,
"Why couldn't I have thought of that?"
right,
Because
right.
'Cause I'm scribbling things on paper everywhere.
Yeah.
City of residence and how long?
We live in Wake Forest. It'll be 3 years in March. We moved there from Garner, so we
Okay.
lived in Garner for about 11 or 12 years.
Alright.
Long time, yeah.
Your burning desire is to what?
I really enjoy helping people with honest assessments of what they have from an insurance standpoint, making sure that they're properly protected. I use the phrase, I'm a very low impact when it comes to quoting. I'm not gonna put a whole lot of pressure on you if you wanna bundle things. If you don't, that's fine. It's totally up to you. But as a result, I tend to get a lot of people that either come back later or
Mhm.
they will say, "Hey, thank you for telling me that this wasn't a good fit.
Yeah.
That what I have is really a good piece to my puzzle."
And that's what I've found with successful people in general, but especially in BNI. I like the person that will I have more respect for somebody that will talk themselves out of business
Yeah,
because it's the right thing to do for the
that's
client.
right. That's
Because
right.
we could all upsell and depending on what you're doing, we may not know. I don't know a lot about insurance, so I may not know if you tell me, "Oh, you need
Right.
XYZ at this level." I'm like, "Well, okay,
Right.
you come recommended." So,
Right.
I like people like you just said that you talk yourself out of business because it's right for the customer.
That's right. Yeah.
Key to your success.
Organization. I see people all the time that are just doing the things that are not hard, but they're not doing them well. So, like, for example, they're not keeping good notes. They're not taking the time to answer the phone,
Yeah.
to set a schedule of, "Hey, you told me that you want me to call you in the afternoon. Set a reminder." I use a lot of reminders, whether it's in Outlook or on my phone or things like that, to where if somebody says, "I want you to call me at 3:30," then I set a reminder so
Yeah.
that at 3:30 I call, and they tend to say, "Wow, that was odd. You told me you were gonna call me at 3:30 and it's 3:30." It's just common sense stuff, and so I use a lot of organizational tools to be successful as a result.
Good. And my favorite question on here, and there's a few people watching, haven't got to know you yet, but they will by the end of the show. Something no one knows about you.
So I've got a bunch of those. I don't know. I'll
Mhm.
I'll kinda go off the board with some ones that maybe you don't know, but, so I've never actually had a nosebleed in my whole life.
Dang.
Um,
Nobody's ever hit you in the nose with a ball or something like
Not
that?
yet.
Oh, man, you
No.
must be coordinated then.
Yeah, I've never had a nosebleed, which is weird. And then I would say probably, doing most people don't know some of the things that I've done in the past. Like, I've had some media credentials
Mhm.
to kind of go behind the scenes on
We're
some
gonna talk about that. Yep,
various sporting events and
yep.
things like that. So, I have fun with it. But again, I'm real low impact.
No
I don't
nosebleeds.
broadcast it. But yeah, no nosebleeds.
Huh, that may be a first on the show, right, Am? No, I don't think we've gotten to that part of it yet, but you never know. Well, in this part of the show, I love to get into how people got into BNI.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna tell people why I wanted you on the show for a while. And I've told you this to your face on your organization and everything. But literally, when was the first time you ever heard BNI?
Yeah, I was working for State Farm. I was working for State Farm for about 3 years. And our way that we got business at that time was just cold calling for the most part. We would buy internet leads
Mm,
and we would call those internet leads
no.
and hope that somebody was actually legitimate on the phone. That they weren't just a computer that was, somebody was messing around. Although you would know sometimes when you'd see the name or whatnot.
Mm,
Um, but so we were doing that, and when I left State Farm and went to work for Riddick Insurance Group, he asked me, he said, "How many contacts do you have?" And I said, "I don't really know what you mean." And he said, "Well, do you know anybody that's in the real estate field or in the mortgage lending industry?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Well, you need to meet those people." And I said, "I don't know how to meet those people. I don't know what you mean." And so at the time, my agency principal was a member of a BNI chapter that met at IHOP in Six Forks,
mhm.
and said, "Listen, there's another chapter." He knew Randy Griffin,
Yeah.
and so he introduced me to Randy and said that, they're starting to form this chapter here in Raleigh. And so I went and they said, "No, we have somebody that is in PNC for that chapter, but we have a chapter that's meeting in Cary." And I said, "Okay." And I didn't really know anything about BNI and went and was a member of that chapter for about 2 years, 2.5 years.
Right. The first meeting you went to for BNI,
Mhm.
regardless of where it was, what were your expectations walking in? Any?
Yeah, I was really nervous. I didn't know what to do. Nobody prepped me about a 60-second introduction speech or any of those things. And so when it came time for me to talk, I didn't know what to say. I had literally only been working for him for, I don't know, maybe a month. And so I didn't know a lot about our products. I didn't know a lot about our agency. I didn't know a lot about anything. And so having to get up there and do a speech, I didn't even know that, hey, like, there's a realtor in here and there's an insurance agent in here. It probably isn't best to broadcast that you're doing insurance as well out of respect. And so after the meeting, I'm reaching out and scheduling one-on-ones with all these people trying to get them to send it to me. And I just didn't really understand the whole concept. But what I did find interesting was all of those people were really interested in helping, where I said, "Hey, I'm looking to
Good.
grow and find another chapter," and they were all saying, "Hey, I've got a friend of mine that has a chapter in Fuquay. Maybe I'll introduce you." So they were all very, very helpful for trying to do what you wanted to do.
One of the neat things I like about BNI, not only does it help you grow your business, but it teaches there's little things you don't really think about going into it is, ooh, public speaking.
Mhm.
Because most people hate it,
Right.
even if it is for just 30 or 45 seconds.
Yes.
So, and you stood up and you made it through your 60-second.
That part doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
It's just I just didn't know what
Let's
what to
say.
say.
And then, so you joined that chapter.
Yeah, joined a chapter in Cary.
Right.
It was a brand new chapter, so
Mhm.
we went through the whole core process, and that was interesting too, to see that whole process of, here's how you do it right. We're gonna send all these letters out, inviting them to one big visitors day, and just really have a big boost towards membership, and it was a good time. We were in that chapter for about 2.5 years, and then just schedules just changed, and I couldn't make it to Cary at that time, and, but that group is still there, and you pull it up now, and there's totally different people in
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
but, there's still a couple of familiar faces.
When you walked out of the first time you visited that chapter, what was your brain? How were you figuring out, "Ooh, I can apply this. This will
Mhm.
work here." What were your thoughts kinda driving back to the office?
Yeah, I mean, first thought was I really wanted to get that seat. I wasn't the only insurance agent that was applying for that seat, and so I started to think, well, how can I do something to set myself apart, whether it's inviting visitors or scheduling one-on-ones or doing it was a little bit different because nobody really had a seat yet.
Yeah.
We were all just kind of uh competing for these
Mhm.
seats, and so knowing the strategic people to have one-on-ones with or who are gonna be the decision makers, was interesting because now when a visitor comes, we just recently added a new real estate agent, and so we basically told all the real estate agents, "Hey, these are your decision makers, so these are the people that you need to really invest time in." Whereas with us, it was just kinda like, "Well, I don't know who to invest time in. I'm just gonna kinda spray to all fields and see what
Yeah.
happens."
And I am the consulting director for Joe's chapter, and one of the things that was apparent to me about you from the beginning, and I've told Steve Hand this, so I have bragged on you on this. I've told you this too.
Mhm.
I love the processes you have in place. The people that truly excel in BNI have those processes in place. You talked about them earlier, just scheduling,
Mhm.
tracking, all that
Yeah.
stuff. I know you're an app kinda guy as well, and you figured that out pretty quick,
Yeah.
and you're able to tell people, if you use the app simple things like this,
Yeah.
if you use the app, you can track how much money you're bringing in from
Right.
BNI, which you should know about your business regardless.
Yeah.
So I've loved that about you from the beginning, the way you've got everything organized.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna put any time or money into any activity,
Mm.
you have to be able to see a return on that investment, and if you have no way of tracking whether there's a return on the investment, why are you doing it?
Do you know on for 2018, is there a percentage of the business you did that was through BNI?
I haven't worked out the exact percentage, but I can estimate it. It's probably about 10 to 15% of my
Okay.
business was from BNI.
Right. Is there a goal to raise that number in 2019?
I didn't raise from a percentage standpoint of my business, but I did raise it to where I came up with a concrete goal that I wanted to see, um, basically 50 referrals from the real estate team in 2019.
Okay.
So whether that's from our real estate agent or from our mortgage lender, and then ancillary pieces like our carpet cleaner. But 50 referrals, I felt like it was basically one referral a week,
Mhm.
which I felt was very fair and doable.
Is that off to a good start so far?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit wonky in the start because of the transition with the real estate agent,
Yeah.
where we just got Trinity in our group. But now that we're hopefully beginning to set up the power teams and things like that,
Yeah.
then it'll start to move forward a little bit better.
As you've been in BNI this long now, what have you learned to teach the new members that you had alluded to earlier
Yeah, I
that you'd
mean,
love
what
to
I
have
try to
known?
get across to them the most is understanding who are key players in your chapter, not only for you to be able to pass business to, but also people that you can easily get business from. So for me, I can easily get business from a real estate agent or from a mortgage person. Um, and so it's very much my responsibility to then to basically explain that to them that, "Hey, I feel like I can get business from you. It should be a very easy conversation for you. Here's some suggestions on how to bring that up to the customer." Whereas for me, I feel like I can get business to an alarm person or to a
Yeah.
financial planner. And so for me, I put some thought into that and say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking about saying. Is this a good way to say it?" But there are a lot of people in our chapter that I feel like, "Hey, you could get business from so and so. What are you doing to foster that? What are
Yeah.
you doing to explain to them what you're looking for? What are you doing to find out about more about them?" So for me, an example would be we have a carpet cleaner in our group, and I'm
Brian
trying,
Barton.
yeah,
Yep.
Brian Barton, and I'm trying to figure out a good way to say, "Hey, Brian, is there anything you can do to the carpets before they start walking on them to make them better? Make them more stain resistant, or make them, maybe they have a pet, to make it more preventative in nature, where I can then say, "Hey, before you get everything moved in, call Brian and have the carpets coated with," I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just, but thinking like that, where you can then give them a value statement, where then you come across as, "Man, you were really helpful in that situation," where they don't know my intentions are saying, "I want to try to find business for
Yeah.
Brian."
But
No,
still, and we talk about this each week. It's up to the members to educate the other members
it
on
is.
how to promote us. And
It
a lot of
is.
people, as we were talking earlier about the 45 seconds and the 10 minutes,
Yeah.
they don't maximize that time to understand because
Yeah.
a lot of people write insurance. There's 5,000 insurance people
That's
probably in the
right.
triangle, right? It's conservatively. So a lot of people can do that. What's going to separate you is one thing,
Mhm.
but what do you do that's memorable that I can go, here's why you need to call Joe
Right.
is the whole goal on
Right. Yeah.
taking advantage of that
Giving them
time.
something to bring with them
Yeah.
on their sales calls.
And I know one of the things that I've learned through BNI is the difference between an independent or insurance agent and one
Mhm.
that is tied to a brand, Allstate, State Farm, Nationwide, and
That's
all
right.
that. And so I'm sure you've enjoyed those benefits the last couple of years at Riddick, right?
Yeah, it's a big benefit for us because we have clients now that, I'll talk to and I'll say, "Hey, we've got you with company A and things just don't look right from a price standpoint for renewal. And so let's look at company B and we can move them." And so, I've had a lot of conversations. We've actually got one carrier now that we're slowly trimming our book of business down with because they're just not very competitive right now. And so just about every customer, when I'm coming up for renewal and I'm saying, "Hey, let's look at this," we're able to find them something better. And it wasn't even something that they initiated. It was something where we just said, "Hey, we think that this might be a better service for you. Can we look at this for you to determine whether or not that is a better fit for you? Because if it is, then let's do this." And then they are appreciative of, "Hey, wow, I never really even thought we could do that."
And most consumers don't get the annual call from their insurance agent,
Not
and
usually.
most people don't even think about it. They
No.
just get their renewal in the mail and go, "Oh, everything's fine. I'll
Right.
do that."
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you'd be surprised how many things that we find when we do those type of things. Like, to give you an example, I just talked to a customer the other day, and the customer, we were doing the review, and she said, "Yeah, I have my car with you," and I said, "All right, it looks like on the policy we have a 2015 Jeep Cherokee," and she said, "No, I have a 2018 Compass," and I said, "No, you have a 2015 Jeep Cherokee," and she said, "Well, I bought a Compass last year." And I said, "Well, when did you buy it?" She said, "It was like April of last year." And I said, "Well, we don't have that on the policy." And she said, "Well, the dealer told me that they were going to call it in." I said, "Well, the dealer never called it in. And to be honest with you, they're not really able to call it in." So really for this particular girl, she had been driving for the past 9 months. The vehicle that she was driving was not the one that was covered.
Oh.
And had she had any accident or anything like that, there wouldn't have been coverage. The claim would have been denied. And thankfully,
Oh,
we were able to
boy.
catch that by just calling her and saying, "Hey, I want to review your stuff, make sure everything is still
Wow.
well." Um, and I actually did a Facebook video on it after that, just to say, "Hey guys, don't forget to do this."
Why would the dealer have said they would?
Convenience. They'll say,
Do
"Hey, we'll
they?
take." We do get a lot of dealer calls. So Mondays we get a lot of calls from people that have bought a car over the weekend,
Okay.
and they say, "Hey, I'm calling from Crossroads, and I want to call in this vehicle." And we usually will tell them, "Hey, give me the details, but I need to call the customer before I can give you any details." Um, but yeah, a lot we see that actually a lot where 10 it tends to be our older population where they just say, "I'll take care of it for you, Mrs.
Yeah.
Smith," and then they don't, and then they don't call. Whereas if you were a dealership, you really shouldn't take on that liability aspect of
No,
it.
not at all.
Um, but because again, she could have gone back to the dealership and said, "Well, they said that they were gonna call it in, but what proof do you have that somebody actually said that?"
Yeah.
And so, you
When
know,
somebody buys a car, there's a window that it is covered.
there is,
How
yeah.
long?
So it just depends on whether it's an added vehicle or a replacement vehicle, so you'd have to read the policy language, but typically you're gonna have 30 days, because most people are gonna have some sort of comp and collision on their vehicles.
Okay.
So usually you're gonna have 30 days, but we get calls every week. I got a text message on Saturday at like 7:30 in the morning. "Hey, I'm buying a car.
Yeah.
Is there somebody that works on Saturdays?" It's like, "No, you're good. Don't worry.
Okay.
Just call me Monday."
9 months without coverage. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Thankfully, she didn't have an accident, but, I
yeah.
mean, ultimately, when you think about and it's not to put anybody like a Geico or somebody like that down, but when you don't have an agent that's being
Yeah.
proactively calling you and saying, "Hey," the only way that she would have ever found out is either A, she looked at her page and said, "Wait a minute, where's my compass?" Or B, she had an accident and
Mm.
found out that there was no coverage.
Oh, man. I just can't imagine that. Are we, in general, underinsured or overinsured?
I think I'm a coverage guy, and so obviously price is important for me, but I'm a coverage guy, and so I'd say the vast majority of people that we talk to are probably underinsured. One of the ways that I kind of assess that is I'm going to ask you questions about what are your assets? Tell me about what you have. What's your net worth? Which is a weird invasive
Mm.
question where people don't want to talk about that. But, if you tell me that you've got 4 rental properties and you've got, a house that's $500,000 and then we're carrying just required minimum limits, I try to explain to them that, "Okay, let me explain what that means." And so when we're talking about and saying, "All right, Mike, so when you're carrying 30,000 in injury coverage, that means your company's gonna cover 30 and Mike's gonna cover the rest." And usually when you
Mm.
kinda personalize it,
Yeah.
then they start to say, "Wait a minute, I don't like
I'm not
that."
going
I
yeah.
don't like that. So then you say, "Well, what do you feel comfortable with?"
Yeah.
I can make some recommendations. I can tell you what I have, but ultimately it's their policy. They have to choose what protection that they want.
And I've also learned through BNI and through this show as well, we've had a couple other insurance agents on, is we as the consumer and owner of a car and needing to insure the car, we don't factor in the uninsured motorist that we might have an accident with one day and what
Mhm.
we could be on the hook for. That
Mhm.
that rarely comes up in
Yeah,
conversation,
there's a
does
lot
it?
of people that'll say, "Well, I own this car outright, and so why do I need to carry comp and collision? I'm a
Yeah.
good driver. I'm not gonna hit anybody." And it's like, "That's fine, but what about the knucklehead that hits you in the car
Yeah.
while they're driving and drives off
Yeah.
or doesn't leave a note?" And things like that. And so, yeah, I usually try to just paint scenarios,
Mhm.
and once they kind of hear different scenarios of what might happen, then they can make those decisions because all it is the transfer of risk from you to me.
Yeah. And usually when you my guess is when you give them scenarios like that, either it's happened to a family member or a friend where
Hmm.
they're like, "Okay, that makes sense now."
Right, right. Yeah, we see a lot of scenarios where it makes for easy storytelling in our industry.
We're here with Joe Aiello, independent insurance agent with Riddick Insurance Group. He's a member of RD 18. He's secretary treasurer for Connections in Motion. They meet Thursdays at noon at Red Hot and Blue on Falls. Joe, we talked earlier about Joe's connection with Chicago sports, and I always like to talk about firsts on the show. And I believe, and I always clarify this by I believe you are the first one to be a published author on ESPN. You have View from the Bleachers, which you've been doing about 15 years, right?
Yeah.
Talking mainly about the Bears,
No, Cubs.
mainly about the Cubs,
Hmm.
my yeah. But you kind of talk about other Chicago sports.
Little
Right.
bit,
So
yeah.
how did all this get started? And me being an Astros guy, you being a Cubs guy, I'm glad we both finally got our World Series. You
Hmm.
waited a little bit longer than I did, but finally the Cubs got there. So what started all this?
Yeah, I was in college and
Where
being
were you in college?
Western Carolina
Right. Okay.
University. Yep. And so being in college, you've got a lot of time on your hands. And so again, I was watching a lot of baseball and just being a lifelong Cub fan, growing up in Chicago and that was always my team. I would come home from school and watch baseball games and things like that. And I never got the opportunity to see them win. Ultimately, they just they were never very good. And So there was a year, it was 2003, and they were in the playoffs, which
Mhm.
was exciting because, they hadn't been in the playoffs in about 5 or 6 years. And I remember we were sitting on the couch, my wife and I, we didn't have any kids at the time, and, I was watching the NLCS, and the Cubs were basically 5 outs away from going to the World Series, and it didn't seem real to me, and I remember saying to my wife, I literally said, "We're 5 outs away from
Oh,
going to
you
the World
didn't.
Series." Um, and then all of a sudden just, chaos happened and they ended up losing the series overall. And I remember I told my wife, "Man, it feels like somebody died." Like like I
Mm.
was so invested in this team and so invested in this season. I really thought that this was going to be the year, and to see it now happen where it's not gonna happen all of a sudden just so abruptly, it feels like somebody died, and she was like, "You're an idiot. Like, how do you compare it to somebody dying?"
You have no idea, right?
And so, yeah, so, I mean, for me, I was just like, I feel like that, and at the time, blogs were just starting to
Mhm.
kinda take off, and so it used to be when I would tell somebody, "Oh, yeah, I have a blog," they didn't know what I meant. Now, I mean, if you don't have a blog with a
Yeah.
business, you're doing it wrong. But, so I went on the day. It was back in the days of Blogger, which
Mhm.
was even before Yahoo or Google purchased Blogger. Um, and I created a blog on Blogger, and I basically had, a couple of friends that would read it. And, that was basically all it was going to be. It's just going to be me, getting my thoughts out and getting basically therapy,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
essentially. And, I'll never forget. It was probably about a year into the blog, and I had one of the readers and said, "Hey, are you looking for any writers?" And I said, "Sure." And so I brought him on, and we both wrote together, and that was interesting. And then again, it was probably about a year in, and I got an email from a company, and they said, "Are you interested in talking about advertising?" And I said, "I
Oh,
don't know what they're talking about." And I had all these people like, "Read this email. Are they wanting me to advertise on their site, or are they wanting to give me money?" I can't think that they'd wanna give me money.
yeah.
So, um, but yeah, long story short, I got some clarification. They said, "Sure, what are your rates?"
Ah.
I don't know. I don't know my rates. So
Is 10,000 too high?
I told them 10,000. I said, 10,000. How does that work?" And they're like, "Oh, no, no, that's way too much. We were thinking," and I think they said like $1,000.
For how long?
It was for a year, and you just had to post
Oh.
some links on your site, and I was
Oh,
like, "Are you
man.
joking? Like, this is so easy. This will
That's
take me
Christmas
10
money,
minutes."
yeah.
So, yeah, at one point, this was years ago when I was really focusing hard, but at one point, I think it brought in about $18,000. Um,
Really?
it was insane. And when I would sit there and I think to myself, I'm literally just putting links on my
Mhm.
sidebar, and they're paying me money for this. Um, it was weird, but yeah, I mean, gradually it evolved, and then one day I got an email. I don't know if you would recognize the name, so it's not even important. But I got an email from a guy that at the time was writing um, for ESPN. He was
Mhm.
one of their lead baseball guys.
Who was that?
And I'm trying to think. I'm
Okay.
drawing a blank at this
Yeah.
point now, but
You'll think of it in about 20
I'll think
minutes.
of
Just
yeah,
blurt it out.
I'll think about it. But so I got this email, and it said, "Would you like to write for ESPN? We're coming up with a new blog network, so to speak." And I deleted it because it was from a Gmail account. It wasn't even
Mhm.
from an email account that was ESPN. And so I deleted it, and then I went back to it and I said, "Well, what does it hurt? I might as well write him back." And I did. And I wrote him back, and he said, "Yeah, we're starting this new network, and would you like to be a part of it?" And so long story short, I did. And for probably about 5 or 6 years, it was loosely affiliated with ESPN. They didn't put a lot of time into the blogs like they did with some of their other aspects of the
Mhm.
site. But I mean, it got us a lot of cool perks. I mean, we got some of the opportunities to, go get some media credentials and some interviews that I
There you
wouldn't
go.
have done. I had interviewed Buster Olney and Jerry Krasnick and a couple other
Yeah.
big name guys, and but a lot of that stuff just wasn't interesting to me. It wasn't really my passion. I just enjoyed writing,
Yeah.
and so
Would you post daily during the season?
most of the time,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
we there were times where at some point we were writing 2 to 3 a day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, it was pretty aggressive.
Now, are you a second guesser blogger? Like, I wouldn't have sent the guy
No.
from 3rd with 1
No,
out.
I tend to be what I always explained to anybody that I ever brought on to write for the site was use it as a way to facilitate conversation. So write it as if we are walking into a bar and saying, "Did you see the game? What did you think about this?"
Yeah.
And so I didn't really want I came to the conclusion that people are not coming to us to find out what happened. They all watched the game.
Yeah.
If they wanna find out what happened, they're gonna rewatch it or they're gonna watch the news. What we wanted to find out was what did they feel about what happened?
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
I was just gonna mention when Joe was talking about deleting that email,
Yes.
and I always tell people, you need to have emails at your business, because otherwise it's very unprofessional.
Yes.
And here is this would have hurt him.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
But if he is writing to somebody to get their business,
Yeah.
and he's writing with a Gmail account,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and some say, "Oh, I don't know what that,"
Oh,
forget
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But if they see the name of the business there,
That's right.
Yes, I agree.
it makes more sense.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
It a lot of I'm with you on that.
Are you done with the sports?
No, no, but
'Cause
go ahead.
oh, no.
Go
No,
no.
I wanted Joe to talk about we were talking about umbrella, I mean, about, coverage and all
We're
that.
gonna come back to that, yeah.
Okay.
We'll holler, yeah, but we will. So are you're still involved with this?
Little bit. I've
Okay.
got a community of people that we still kinda keep in touch.
Okay.
It's actually fostered a pretty good community of people. And in fact, it was one point, a funny story. We had been doing it now for about, at that time, maybe 12 or 13 years. This was in 2016. And a lot of the guys are all over the map as far as where they live, but a lot of them live out west. And one of the guys is a real estate agent out west, and he sent me a message and said, "Hey, a bunch of us are going to get together for a meetup in San Diego for this 3-game series.
Oh,
Do you want to come and join us? We would really like to have you." And I said, "No, I can't. I can't afford to just take a 3-day vacation to San Diego and leave my wife with the kids and work." And they were like, "No, we get it, no problem." So long story short, a bunch of those guys actually paid all expenses for me to fly out there, go to the games, stay in the hotel,
wow.
all of those things. And I remember when I asked my wife, she said, "Why would they do that? It's so expensive." And I said, "Well, one guy, he's a big time real estate agent in Los Angeles. Another guy's a big time heart surgeon in Seattle. This is not Raleigh money. This
Yeah.
this is take a client out for lunch money." So, but yeah, we had a great time and
And they were
just,
all Cubs fans.
all Cub fan, all dedicated readers
Yeah.
of the blog, where they just said, "Hey, you've provided us value for all these years for free.
Yeah.
We want to give back to
Very
you."
nice. At the height of this, how many people were reading the blog, you know?
We would probably get about 8 to 9,000 a day. Yeah,
That
yeah.
must have been fun.
It was a lot, but I tried not to focus too much on that. I just
Yeah.
tried to focus on maintaining a good, um, a kind atmosphere where you
Mhm.
didn't just get trolls all the
No.
time, and where we had a good commenting policy where you couldn't just tear people down. And so I was really most proud about that. Not necessarily the readership, but just
Yeah.
that we were a place where you could talk Cubs and disagree and still be respected.
What was the best game you got credentials to?
Um, all of my credentials were all minor league games.
Okay.
Being, so far away from DC or Baltimore, a place like that. But I went to a lot of Mudcats games, a lot of Durham Bulls games, those type of games like that. And that was fun,
Yeah.
but I was there for a purpose.
Yeah. Who was the best Cubs prospect you saw coming up while you were in the heat of the heat of the or the
Sure.
height of the blog?
So most well-known people that I've interviewed from a prospect standpoint, Jeff Samardzija,
Yeah.
who was a Notre Dame wide receiver he had just left college, and so he was pitching for the Cubs minor league team. And then in the Rays organization, Evan Longoria.
Oh, yeah.
So he was a
Yeah.
big time one. Ben Zobrist.
Mhm.
Um, those were probably the
Right.
biggest ones. Matt Merton, but he didn't stick around too long.
Well, you and I have another connection. I have an autographed Jeff Samardzija baseball
Okay.
because he was pitching for the Daytona Cubs
Uh-huh.
when I was living in Daytona. And this is coming out of Notre Dame as the
Mhm.
receiver, and everybody followed sports, knew
Mhm.
who he was.
Mhm.
And I figured I won it through a raffle. They were, drawing seat numbers and all that stuff. And I
Yeah.
got it. And I thought, you know what? You never know.
Yeah.
And he's had a good career. He made the right decision to sign a
Yeah.
baseball
He
contract.
did. I mean, he made
He's
a lot
made a
more money.
lot more money than he would have
Mhm.
in football, and he's a pretty good football player.
Yeah.
So I have a Jeff Samardzija autographed baseball. So don't know what it's worth, but I got
Probably
one of
nothing.
those. I got one of those. And also, I'll touch off real quick before we go back to some insurance stuff. You were a Tough Mudder competitor,
Well, yeah, so we had
and you have Finisher, I believe, is correctly
that
the
was
way you
a
wrote it.
bad decision. We had some people in our like, our life group at church that they were all big time, fitness nuts, and I am not. You can only see my face, and you can tell that I'm not a fitness nut. But, at the time, they were all gonna do it, and the peer pressure concept came in, and they said, "Are you gonna do it with us?" And I said, "No." They said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Alright, fine, I'll do it." Thankfully, one of the guys really sprained his ankle pretty bad when we were doing it. So I was able to walk most of the course and light jog with him the whole course, which was nice because I did not have the cardio and stamina to do it. Um, I vastly underestimated what the training required was. But I mean, it's if you're not familiar with what it is, it's about 13 and a half miles for the
It's like a
course.
half marathon,
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
a half marathon, but in that in that course, they have all these different obstacles. So like some of the obstacles were crawling under a net that was charged with like electric bolt,
Oh,
where
good.
it'll pop you like a
Yeah.
car battery pop. And then there was another one where you had to crawl in these tubes that were maybe 24 inches in diameter or 36 inches in diameter, where they're not very big, and you're crawling for, whatever, 100 yards, where you're very, very nervous about being in that enclosed space and
Yes.
just all kinds of things.
How
And
long did it take you to finish?
about 5 hours.
Wow, you must have been wiped
We
out.
were we were exhausted. All of
Oh,
us
yeah.
were very exhausted. We went and we left after that and went to a steakhouse that night and just demolished the steakhouse. And
Oh, they probably love that.
I mean, I had mud in places I didn't need.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I had.
I just picture the training in stripes is what that was basically.
It was gross. And but I tell you, when I finished, I was glad I did it. It
Oh,
was one of
yeah.
those things where it was a bucket list
Oh,
thing. You did
yep.
it. I'll never do it again. But yeah, it's worth doing once.
And I know you're very active in your church, which
Mhm.
is an important part of your life as well, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's one of the neat things, again, when people go visit a BNI chapter, the type of people they're gonna meet are
Mhm,
not only, people successful and working hard to
mhm.
make their business more successful, but also very involved in the community.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
those are the type of people you're gonna meet in BNI, and I like
Mhm.
that a lot, so.
Absolutely.
Alright, so let's go back to insurance here real quick. The value of being an independent insurance agent does wonders.
Mhm,
You've said that we are mostly underinsured.
mhm,
What other questions don't we ask as a consumer that we should be asking? If you cold call me one day, and
mhm.
what are some of the things I need to ask you to figure out? Are you the guy to go with?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that people have going on that they don't really know will be a problem. For example, we get a lot of people now with just technology that they're driving for Uber or Lyft, and they don't realize that that's a problem.
Mm,
Or they're maybe renting out their house with Airbnb or VRBO or any of those different websites, and they don't realize that that might be a problem. And so, really, it's just a matter of I try to counsel my people if there's anything that you're not sure of, don't assume. Just call me and ask because we can explain. Because sometimes I don't know the answer without calling and
yeah.
researching and things like that. But just because you're doing those things doesn't mean that it's a deal breaker. It just means we need to take steps to accommodate that. And so I think a lot of times people just don't realize that and they don't take the time to they just assume.
Yeah. One of the things we learned here a couple of months ago with the hurricanes that came through
Mhm.
here was that you can't call the night before to get insurance coverage.
Yeah.
And the other phrase I learned was, I think it's right, when the hurricane is in the box,
Uh-huh.
you can't I can't call you I couldn't call anybody anything, right?
Yeah, so there's 2 concepts there. One is the binding restrictions that they put on us, and we kinda know that it's coming because, when we're tracking Florence, for example, we
Yeah.
know, all right, in a week and a half, we're projected to get a hurricane. So we're just waiting for those emails from the companies that say, "Hey, beginning now, no more changes to coverage, no more deductible changes,
Yeah.
don't bind coverage," things like that. But then the other concept that we got a lot this year was flood
Yeah.
insurance.
Oh, big
Where
time.
I basically it got to the point where I basically just had a standard email that I was sending out. "I'm so sorry that you're nervous.
Yeah.
We're nervous too. Unfortunately, you can buy the flood insurance, but it's not gonna be covered for this
Yeah.
particular hurricane."
Can we do that? And, a lot of us watch the Weather Channel, and I think as of 2017, they started naming these winter storms, which
Yeah,
I thought,
yeah.
okay, nice marketing ploy, get some buzz talking about that. Can you, if we know just a huge nor'easter's coming and all this snow and potential ice and stuff, is there any reason for us before that to look at our policies?
A lot of it just comes down to how quickly the storm comes on. If it's
Yeah,
something where you know pretty well in advance, then it's probably a good idea to look at it. But insurance companies, they're not stupid.
yeah.
They know how the game works because they need to make money too. So most of the time, by the time you think of it, they've already thought of it.
And I guess, and let me ask this the right way. You are correct the way I asked it. Let me ask it a different way. So if we know, so today's Monday,
Yeah.
if we heard on the weather this morning, hey, huge system in Hawaii coming this way Thursday night, looks like we may get X.
hmm
Is there any difference on coverage we would need a hurricane versus a winter storm?
Not really. There's really nothing that you'd be adding on the winter storm
Okay.
concept. Sometimes people will change their deductibles to be lower. But from a like an added I mean, you could buy the flood
Freaking awesome.
coverage, but, the flood coverage would be something where you would,
No, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're good.
No,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what about umbrella
Yeah.
coverage?
Umbrellas
And how long? I mean, if I call in and I want to change my insurance,
mhm.
I mean, isn't there a certain amount of days or weeks before that actually takes effect? As
Not
I mean,
usually. We can usually bind coverage changes the same day.
okay.
So if you call me and say, "I wanna add that," we can go ahead and add it that
So
day.
it's up to the company when they say, "Hey, no more
Yeah.
changes."
That's right. Yeah, once they send us the email, and we don't get them all at the same time. We might get one from Progressive on Thursday and then one from MetLife on Friday. It's when their comfort level is as far as, "All right,
So
we're not comfortable
so
binding
back
anymore."
to Mike's question, if we know that in 2 weeks
Yeah.
there we may have a chance of
Mhm.
something,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
okay to do that and the
Absolutely.
insurance okay.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what about umbrella?
Umbrella is one of the best buys in the insurance industry because of how cheap it is. I have a $2 million umbrella, and I think I pay $200 for that for the year. So basically, what that does is if I have a car accident where I'm at fault, um, it's going to first come to my car insurance. And once my car insurance is not enough, then it'll come to the umbrella policy. And that umbrella policy is just added liability.
Yeah.
So, it's just basically saying, hey, if somebody wants to try to come after my assets, this is going to stop them first.
Is
And
that more beneficial to somebody with more assets versus someone with
absolutely,
less?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that single mom working at Walmart that's just struggling to make ends meet
Yeah.
probably doesn't have an umbrella and probably doesn't have a target on their back because some attorney is not going to take that case
Yeah.
and pound on that single mom because there's nothing there. But unfortunately, we live in a society where the more that you own,
Yeah.
the more target that is on your back.
So Amnon should be worried because I know he's loaded. He should be
$9
worried that
million
somebody's
dollar
coming.
umbrella.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But the umbrella covers not just the car, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
Home,
Home.
boat,
Yeah. Which is,
motorcycle, all the
yeah.
different things that you might have, and you can put them in place on a business side as well. So you're gonna have your general liability and then your business liability.
Any worries of summer heat that would make us look at our policy versus any other time of the year?
Not really. Nothing on the hurricanes is where we get nervous on the
Yeah.
summer. Hurricanes and hail. Those are the two big ones that we get nervous about. Hurricanes from the wind side
Yeah.
and then hail from just it's a pain in the butt. So we get a lot of hail claims when we see, into April all the way through about September, October. Is when we get the hail. We had a really bad hailstorm. I don't know if you remember in Fuquay.
Yes.
I think it was last year or the year before, where just big, I mean, golf ball size or baseball size hail with jagged edges. Where had you been outside, it probably would have killed you.
Ooh. And it just demolishes cars. And you go,
Crushes
yeah.
cars. I mean, you can pretty much just count on your car being totaled at
Oh,
that
yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
windows, siding,
Mhm.
gutters, all kinds of stuff. It just tears it up.
Give me two good myths that you always have to dispel about the insurance industry.
One would be that the type of car is just an automatic, like, hey, it's a Camry, and so it's going to cost this much. But there's so many different body styles. There's so many different trim levels. There's so many different packages that companies have now where, Nissan puts this particular package with this, car that makes such a huge difference in rate where it's not just, I'm buying a 2019 Camry. It's going to be how much? and we can't tell that. You got to get me a VIN number.
Okay.
And then another one would be, and we see this one a lot. We get people that move from other countries, and they say, "I moved from France, and I was in France for 30 years, and then now I'm here. Why is it so expensive?" And unfortunately, it just is. I mean, in North Carolina, we don't allow for international driving experience, and so they're treated as that 16-year-old cheerleader that just got her license, and it is what it is, even though they might have all kinds of experience, which, in my opinion, is an unfair way to treat them, but
Mm.
that's how it works.
Yeah, North Carolina, if you go state by state in the United States, we have some seriously hard
It's terrible. No,
regulations,
it's
don't we?
terrible. But at the same time, our homeowners insurance rates, it may not feel it, but our homeowners insurance rates for being coastal are some of the cheapest of all the
Oh, okay.
coastal states up and down the Atlantic.
We've had a number of people, number of different professions on the show, and we always laugh and talk about, hey, if you're the doctor, the lawyer, the computer person, when you go to church or little league or whatever, there's always like, hey, doc, come here. I got this thing on my face. Do you get that? Joe, insurance question for you.
Not as much as I would like. I would actually like I would like people to ask me, my brother's a police officer, and so whenever you hear somebody's a police officer, they've got a million
Oh,
million
yeah.
questions. How fast can I be going before I get pulled over? Did you ever shoot anybody? And all these questions. I wish that my profession was really interesting where you would get all these questions, but unfortunately you don't. Usually the people that we get questions from are the people that have problems.
Yeah.
And it's not that those aren't the people we want, but I would much prefer a book of business where everybody never called in,
Mm.
never had any changes, never needed anything, never filed any claims, just paid their bills in full, and
Yeah.
we're happy customers. But usually the people that you get tend to have some sort of a backstory to them.
Yeah, and I would imagine a lot of the customers you have that were proactive in calling you
Yeah.
usually have their stuff together. They're
Yeah.
ahead of the curve
Absolutely.
and probably can get better deals because they
Mhm.
are ahead of the
Yep.
curve, right?
Absolutely.
The Riddick Insurance office, how many people in there with you?
I've got a count now. We've got, I think 7
Okay.
of us.
And why the move to them? What was the attraction with them?
Yeah, I was working for State Farm, and it's a great company to work for, but at the time when I was working for State Farm, there just wasn't a lot of ceiling from an income standpoint at that time. I worked for a brand new agent, and so while she was a great boss, she just couldn't afford to pay a whole lot. And when you're one of the top producers in the triangle from a team member standpoint, and you're killing yourself and you're writing tons and tons of business and you're not making a whole lot of money, it's really a no-brainer when you just say, "Well, I'm gonna try this, and maybe I take a step back from a temporary income standpoint, but in the long run, I could make double or triple what I'm making now." So it was a no brainer, but it was scary to go out
Mhm.
and basically say, "All right, now I'm going to have to generate all this business myself. There's no leads. I have to be the leads."
Yeah. Yeah. So your goal for your chapter, how many new members would you like to see by the end of the year?
We'd like to see ourselves be up to 20 by the
Okay.
end of the year. We just got up to 13 by adding Trinity, our real estate agent, and
There's 3 more coming, right?
we've got two pending applications right now that have been turned in and should be approved this week. And we have another gentleman that's in computer repair that is going to be filling out his application. So that should bring us up to 16. And
Wonderful.
so we're well ahead of the pace for this year.
All right. And that's RD18 Connections and Motions. They meet Thursdays at noon at Red Hot and Blue. If you like barbecue, wonderful place to be. Good music before the meeting as well. Joe, loved having you on the show, learning about insurance. If you have any questions about Joe, please give him a call, or about insurance. Please give him a call, 919-827-6538. Also, check out View from the Bleachers if you're a Cubs fan. And may you win as many National League pennants as you can while the Astros are still good. Would like to see anybody beat Boston these days. I know we're all tired of seeing the Red Sox. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Brian Richardson, the other day,
Mhm.
just to congratulate him on the Patriots winning. And there are all these stories out there about these 18-year-old kids in New England who have 12 world titles to their name. They have no idea how
No,
bad their city was
no,
for
they don't
years.
understand what it's like to go through any kind of drought at all.
Anyways, Joe, we've enjoyed having you on the show, learned about you. Love the stories, and good luck with the insurance. Good luck with Connections in Motion. Our guest next week is Pam Goodman with K6 Easy, learning about how to help your kids in school. And we'll see you next week on Triangle BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.